Episode 5 just dropped the most devastating reveal about Pennywise's origins and his daughter living among the townspeople. And I guarantee the clues hidden in this episode will completely shatter your understanding of DERRY. Buckle up, because this breakdown is about to get dark. If you thought episode 4 left us with questions, episode 5 just ripped open a whole new layer of horror that connects everything we've been theorizing about. This episode doesn't just move the story forward, it fundamentally changes how we understand Pennywise, the town of DERRY, and the cosmic nightmare that's been feeding on this place for centuries. We're getting answers, but those answers are leading to even darker questions. The military operation has gone sideways, the kids are in over their heads, and someone we thought we could trust might actually be working for the entity itself. So instead of wasting time, let's dive straight into the chaos, because this episode is absolutely packed with details that recontextualize everything. First off, we need to talk about what happened in those sewers, because the fallout from Operation Nightbolt is way worse than anyone anticipated. General Shaw's plan to weaponize glue has spectacularly backfired, and the body count is rising fast. We saw soldiers getting picked off one by one last episode, but now we're seeing the psychological aftermath. The military didn't just lose men down there, they lost their minds. Dick Halloran is barely holding it together after his vision, and the trauma he experienced is manifesting in ways that are affecting everyone around him. Remember that lockbox his grandmother taught him about? Well, it's been cracked wide open, and all those demons he's been suppressing are now loose in DERRY. This isn't just bad for Dick, it's catastrophic for the entire town, because his psychic abilities mean his trauma can literally become real. But here's where things get really interesting. The episode opens with a flashback that nobody saw coming. We're taken back to 1935, during the previous cycle, and we finally see the Bradley Gang massacre that's been referenced since episode 1. This isn't just random historical context, it's showing us exactly how glue operates during its feeding cycles. The violence, the chaos, the seemingly random acts of brutality, they're all orchestrated by the entity to maximize fear and death. What's disturbing is how normal everyone acts. Right before it happens, people are going about their daily lives, completely unaware that they're about to become part of DERRY's bloodiest day. The show is drawing a direct parallel to 1962, suggesting that whatever the augury is going to be this cycle, it's coming soon and it's going to be massive. We also get our first real look at the keeper that the tribal elder mentioned last episode. This person, and I'm being vague here because the show is too, appears to be maintaining some sort of record or archive of every cycle. The keeper isn't just documenting deaths, they're tracking patterns, manifestations, and the specific ways glue adapts its hunting methods each cycle. This suggests there's been an organized effort to understand and potentially stop this entity for generations, long before Rose and the indigenous tribe we've been following. The Keeper's chamber is filled with artifacts, drawings, and what looks like pieces of the star material that imprisoned glue originally. If the pillars are weapons, this place is an armory. Now let's talk about the kids, because they are in serious danger, and they don't even fully understand what they've walked into. After their encounter with fake Maddie Clemens, you'd think they'd be more cautious, but this is DERRY and kids here don't exactly have the best survival instincts. Lily is becoming the de facto leader of the group, which makes sense given her connection to Rose and her growing understanding of what glue actually is, but leadership comes with responsibility, and she's making decisions that could get everyone killed. The pills they took, Charlotte's happy pills, were supposed to suppress their fear and make them invisible to Pennywise. Except it didn't work, because glue doesn't just feed on fear, it creates it. You can't just chemically suppress your way out of a supernatural predator's hunting ground. Marge's transformation from skeptic to believer is complete, and honestly, it's about time. Her apology to Lily felt genuine, and you can see she's done lying to herself about what's happening in DERRY. The injury to her eye was a wake-up call, literally and figuratively. She's seeing things clearly now, both literally after getting her glasses fixed and metaphorically about the entity. What's interesting is how quickly she's adapted to this new reality. Most people would be traumatized into inaction, but Marge is ready to fight. This is exactly the kind of courage the Losers Club had. And it's no coincidence that these kids are following a similar path. Rich continues to be the comic relief, but there's something deeper going on with his character. His crush on Marge is obvious, and that hand-holding scene in the sewers was both sweet and hilarious given the absolute nightmare surrounding them. But humor is a defense mechanism, and Rich uses it to cope with fear. He's probably more terrified than anyone, he's just better at hiding it. The show is doing a great job of showing how different people respond to trauma and terror, and Rich's response is to joke his way through it. It's working for now, but you have to wonder when that mask is going to crack. The revelation about Ingrid Kirsch's true identity is something I've been theorizing about for weeks. And episode 5 just gave us the smoking gun. We now know definitively that she's connected to Bob Gray, the human form of Pennywise before he fully became the clown we know. The evidence is stacking up in ways that are impossible to ignore. First, let's talk about that license plate again, 071-690. I mentioned last time how this connects to Psalms 71-6-9. Verses about a child born of God and asking for strength in old age. Well, this episode reinforces that theory because we're seeing Ingrid display abilities that no normal human should have. She's not aging the way she should be. And there's something distinctly wrong about her presence in scenes. Other characters interact with her, so she's not a ghost, but she's not entirely human either. The biggest clue comes from her behavior around Hank Grogan. She's desperate to protect him, almost obsessively so. And it's not just because they're having an affair, there's something deeper. Something that suggests she needs him for a specific purpose. When she tells Charlotte Hanlon that she knows someone who can help hide Hank, she's not just being a concerned lover. She's actively manipulating events. Ingrid has her own agenda, and I think it involves keeping certain people alive or dead depending on what Glue needs. Remember, Pennywise doesn't just kill randomly. It cultivates fear and orchestrates events to maximize its feeding. If Ingrid is his daughter, she'd be doing the same thing, playing the long game. Asterisk, her house continues to be filled with symbolic imagery that connects to Pennywise. That yellow umbrella centerpiece, the red accents throughout her wardrobe and home, even the star-shaped doorbell, these aren't accidents. The production design team is deliberately filling her spaces with clues, but here's what's really disturbing. The apron she wears in this episode, it's got a diamond harlequin pattern, classic clown imagery. But it's subtle enough that most people wouldn't immediately connect it to Pennywise. She's hiding in plain sight, wearing her true nature like a costume that only looks normal if you're not paying attention. The more I watch her scenes, the more I'm convinced she's not just connected to the entity. She might be actively serving it. Now let's address the Stan Kirsch situation because this is where domestic violence subtext becomes text, the way he talks to her, the way he demands his steak be cooked perfectly, the implicit threat in his voice. This is a man who controls through intimidation. The Honeymooners playing in the background isn't subtle. It's a show literally built on jokes about husbands threatening to hit their wives. The show is telling us that Ingrid lives in an abusive household, which complicates everything. Is she evil because she's Pennywise's daughter? Or is she a victim of both her supernatural lineage and her human circumstances? Maybe it's both. Maybe that's the point. She's trapped between two worlds, neither of which offers her safety or autonomy. Her wedding ring appearing and disappearing throughout the episode is another detail that's driving me crazy. In her scene with Stan, she's wearing it. Later, it's gone. This isn't a continuity error. The show is too meticulous for that. It's telling us something about Ingrid's dual nature or her ability to shift between identities. When she's playing the role of dutiful wife, the ring appears. When she's with Hank or operating independently, it vanishes. She's literally putting on and taking off her human identity, which reinforces the idea that she's something other than what she appears to be. The tribal elder's comments about Glue shedding discharge into DERRY's water supply is absolutely horrific and explains so much about why this town is the way it is. People aren't just living near an evil entity, they're literally consuming its influence. Every glass of water, every shower, every meal cooked with DERRY water is potentially contaminated with Glue. As essence, this would explain why the townspeople become more violent and erratic as the cycle approaches its climax. They're being poisoned physically and psychologically by the very thing they're trying to ignore. It's insidious and brilliant from a storytelling perspective because it means nobody in DERRY is truly free from Glue's influence. Dick Halloran's condition is deteriorating rapidly, and what he saw in that vision is coming back to haunt him literally. His grandmother's death, his grandfather's abuse, the lockbox technique failing. All of it is manifesting in the real world now. When he emerges from the sewers and sees Russo's zombified corpse, that's not just Glue messing with him, that's his own trauma creating tangible horrors. His psychic abilities mean the line between his internal demons and external reality is basically non-existent now. The Hank Grogan escape sequence is where this episode really amps up the tension, and there's so much more happening than just a prison break gone wrong. When that bus crashes on Route 9, we're entering territory that Stephen King fans will immediately recognize as significant. Route 9 isn't just any road in King's universe. It's a place where reality gets thin, where the normal rules don't apply, and where supernatural events happen with frightening regularity. The fact that Hank says something attacked the bus is crucial. because it means Galu's influence might extend beyond DERRY's borders. Or there's something else out there in those woods. Either possibility is terrifying. What attacked that bus? Hank doesn't give specifics, he just says something came at them, which suggests it wasn't human, or at least didn't look human. Was it one of Galu's manifestations reaching beyond its normal hunting ground? Or is Route 9 home to other entities, other horrors that exist independently of Pennywise? The Stephen King universe is filled with overlapping supernatural threats. And this show has already connected to The Shining and Dr. Sleep through Dick Halloran. Why not connect to other stories too? The woods of Maine are notoriously dangerous in King's work, filled with things that shouldn't exist but do. The father of Phil and Susie Mousin attempting to shoot Hank is one of the most tragic moments in the episode. This man has lost both his children to something he can't understand, and the only explanation the town has given him is that Hank Grogan is responsible. We know Hank didn't kill those kids, Pennywise did, but try explaining that. To a grieving father, he wants revenge, he wants someone to blame. And Hank is the only target available. The tribal elders comment about townspeople becoming more restless. As the cycle approaches its climax explains this behavior. But it doesn't make it any less heartbreaking. Mr. Mousin is a victim too, driven to attempted murder by grief and Galu's corrupting influence on the town. Charlotte Hanlon continues to be one of the most interesting characters, because she's operating on incomplete information, but making all the right moves anyway. She got Hank out of jail legally, or at least started the process, which shows she believes in his innocence. When Ingrid approaches her asking for help, Charlotte doesn't hesitate. She's building a network of people who are willing to stand against the town's corruption, even if she doesn't fully understand the supernatural element yet. Charlotte represents the best of what DERRY could be, someone who fights for justice, even when it's dangerous. Her connection to the Hanlon family legacy, which we know from the original story includes Mike Hanlon, suggests that standing up to evil is literally in her blood. Now let's get into the black spot, because this is where the show is heading, and it's going to be devastating. For those who don't know, the Black Spot was a nightclub for African American servicemen in the 1930s and 40s. In the novel, it was burned down by a racist group called the Maine Legion of White Decency in 1930, and Pennywise was seen inside. During the fire, over 100 people died. The show is moving this event to 1962, which makes sense for the timeline they're working with and from the trailer footage. We know Hank, Ronnie, and potentially the kids are going to be there when it burns. This is likely the augury for this cycle, the catastrophic event that marks Galu's feeding frenzy reaching its peak. What makes the Black Spot so significant isn't just the death toll, it's what it represents. This is racist violence being amplified by a supernatural entity. Galu doesn't create the racism, that evil is entirely human, but it feeds on it and encourages it. The entity takes the worst impulses people already have and magnifies them, until violence becomes inevitable. The Legion of White Decency would have been racist with or without Galu, but Pennywise's presence in DERRY turns their hatred into mass murder. It's a horrifying commentary on how supernatural evil and human evil can work together, each making the other worse. Dick Halloran being at the Black Spot when it burns adds another layer of trauma to his already devastating backstory. We know from The Shining that Dick carries immense pain from his past, and now we're seeing where some of that pain originates. Watching people burn to death, especially in a place that was supposed to be safe for black servicemen like himself, would scar anyone, but for someone with Dick's abilities, the psychic echoes of that much death and suffering would be unbearable. He wouldn't just see people dying, he'd feel their terror, their pain, their final moments. That's the kind of trauma that doesn't fade, it calcifies into something permanent. The military's response to Operation Nibolt's failure is where things get politically dangerous for everyone involved. General Shaw is not the type of man who accepts defeat gracefully, and his comment about making people answer for what they let them into is a direct threat to Rose, Taniel, and the entire indigenous community. This is absolutely infuriating because Rose explicitly warned him not to go into those sewers. She told him Galu couldn't be controlled, that attempting to weaponize it would end in disaster, and Shaw ignored her. Now that his soldiers are dead or traumatized, he's looking for someone to blame, and he's targeting the very people who tried to prevent this catastrophe. This dynamic is unfortunately very realistic to how indigenous communities have been treated. Throughout American history, they provide warnings based on generations of knowledge. Those warnings are ignored by authorities who think they know better. Disaster strikes, and then the indigenous people are blamed for the consequences. Shaw represents colonial arrogance at its worst. The belief that superior firepower and American military might can overcome anything, even ancient cosmic entities. His failure to weaponize Galoo isn't just a tactical defeat, it's an ideological one, and men like Shaw don't handle that well. Expect retribution, expect violence, and expect the tribe to pay a price they don't deserve. ***, Leroy Hamlin shooting Russo is going to have major repercussions that we haven't seen yet. Shaw mentions he still has questions about what happened down there, which suggests he knows something doesn't add up. Leroy claiming Russo just got hit is technically true, but it's a lie by omission. The fact that Leroy pulled the trigger because he thought what was another manifestation shows just how completely Galoo mind manipulated everyone in those sewers. But here's the thing, Leroy has a damaged amygdala. He's not supposed to feel fear, which means Galoo had to work differently on him. Instead of creating fear, it created confusion, making him unable to distinguish reality from illusion. That's arguably more dangerous because it turned him into a friendly fire risk. Well, almost dying in those sewers is going to change him fundamentally. He's already been touched by Galoo multiple times, seeing figures outside his window, experiencing the entity's presence in ways that other kids haven't. But nearly getting shot by a soldier who couldn't tell what was real, that's trauma on top of trauma. Will is being positioned as someone uniquely vulnerable to Galoo's influence, possibly because of his sensitivity or maybe because the entity has marked him for something specific. Either way, his role in this story is far from over, and I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a key player in whatever confrontation is coming. The revelation about the pillars being buried under turtle shells is fascinating because it connects to the turtle, the cosmic entity that opposes Galoo in the Stephen King multiverse. The turtle is basically a benevolent creator god that exists outside our reality, and it's implied to be one of the few things Galoo actually fears. If the indigenous people carved the pillars from star material and then buried them under turtle shells, they weren't just hiding them, they were adding an extra layer of mystical protection. The turtle's symbolism would act as a ward, making it harder for Galoo to sense or influence the pillars' locations. It's brilliant strategic thinking that shows just how sophisticated the tribe's understanding of this entity really is. The military digging up these pillars and potentially melting them into a weapon is catastrophic on multiple levels. First, these are the only things that can actually contain or harm Galoo, so removing them from their protective locations weakens the mystical prison holding the entity. Second, the act of melting them down might destroy their effectiveness entirely. You can't just reshape star material and expect it to retain its properties. Third, even if they successfully create a weapon, Shaw has already proven he can't control Galoo. So what makes anyone think a star material weapon would work any better? This is hubris meeting cosmic horror, and the result is going to be an absolute disaster. The floating children imagery from the trailer is pure nightmare fuel, and it's directly lifted from the novel and the movies. When Pennywise's victims float, it means they're dead but not gone, trapped in some liminal space between life and death where Galoo continues to feed on their lingering fear. Seeing Patty and other kids floating tells us the death toll is about to spike dramatically. The fact that Lily, Marge, and Ronnie are running through mist while these bodies float above them suggests they're going to witness the augury firsthand. They're going to see exactly what Galoo is capable of when it stops playing and starts feeding in earnest. The mist enveloping DERRY is one of the most ominous visual elements the show has introduced. And if you know Stephen King's work, you know mist is never a good sign. Some fans have theorized this connects to The Mist, King's novel about a military experiment that tears open a portal to another dimension and releases monsters into our world. The military in that story was trying to peer into other realities, which sounds awfully similar to what Shaw is attempting with Operation Nightbolt. What if the military's interference with the pillars, their attempts to weaponize Galoo, has weakened the barriers between dimensions? That mist might not just be atmosphere. It could be a literal thinning of reality, allowing things that should stay locked away to seep through into DERRY. The circus carriage with blood pooling from it is giving us our clearest look yet at Bob Gray's past. This is Pennywise before he fully became the entity we know, when he was still performing as a human clown in a traveling circus. The blood suggests something horrific happened in that carriage, possibly the moment Bob Gray fully gave himself over to Galoo or the moment the entity consumed him entirely. If Lily is going to discover photo albums showing Bob Gray's transformation, she's going to learn the origin story of DERRY's greatest nightmare. Understanding how a human became a monster might be the key to stopping it, or it might just reveal how hopeless their situation really is. Young Periwinkle's wig appearing in what I believe is Ingrid's attic confirms the connection between her and Bob Gray's circus past. She wasn't just the daughter of Pennywise, she was part of his act, performing alongside him before everything went wrong. This adds a tragic dimension to Ingrid's character. Because she was likely just a child when her father became something inhuman. Did she watch him transform? Did she know what he was becoming? Or did Galu's influence happen slowly enough that she didn't realize until it was too late? Either scenario is heartbreaking, and it explains why she might be helping the entity now. She's not evil by choice. She's trapped in a nightmare that started when she was too young to escape. The makeup and prosthetics looking deliberately bad in those flashback shots is genius production design. The show is differentiating between Bob Gray performing as Pennywise the clown and Galu manifesting as Pennywise the entity. Human Bob Gray had cheap carnival makeup and a ratty wig because he was just a performer. The Pennywise we see in the sewers, the one with the elaborate costume and otherworldly appearance, that's the entity wearing the image of the clown as a skin. It's not trying to look like a real clown anymore. It's become an idealized nightmare version of what Bob Gray used to be. The distinction matters because it shows how Galu takes human fears and concepts and twists them into something far worse. Sheriff Bowers calling Hank a fish and referencing what happens to cat killers in Shawshank is darkly funny given that Hank didn't actually kill any cats, Pennywise did, but perception is reality in DERRY, and everyone believes Hank is guilty. The Shawshank references are also interesting because we know Andy Dufresne would theoretically be there at the same time. Imagine being in prison with both an innocent man framed by a cosmic entity and another innocent man framed by his wife's real killer. Shawshank is already a prison where hope struggles to survive. But adding DERRY's supernatural corruption to the mix makes it even bleaker. Every Stephen King connection this show makes enriches the universe while reminding us that horror exists everywhere in this world, not just in DERRY. With 3 episodes left, the show is positioning all its pieces for maximum devastation. The black spot is going to burn, children are going to die. The military's interference is going to make everything worse. And our characters are running out of time to stop any of it. The augury is coming, and unlike the Bradley Gang massacre or the Kitchener Ironworks explosion, we're going to witness this one in real time. The 1962 cycle is reaching its peak, and Galu is about to feed like never before. Everything that's been building since episode 1, the missing children, the military operation, Ingrid's secret identity, Dick's trauma, the kids' investigation, all of it is converging into what's going to be an absolutely brutal finale to this cycle. So what do you think is going to happen? Will the kids survive their confrontation with Pennywise? Can the military be stopped before they make things worse? Is Ingrid going to help or betray everyone? And most importantly, who's going to die in the black spot fire? I want to hear all your theories and thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to see more deep dives into Welcome to DERRY, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 6's breakdown. This show is only getting more intense, and trust me, you're going to want to be here when we break down whatever insanity comes next. I'm Telly Boss 2, and I'll see you in the next one.